يا بهجة الأكوان هذه فرحة، يا بهجة الأكوان هذه فرحة كبرى تزاحم قلبي الولهان.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، له الحمد الحسن والثناء الجميل، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله الملك الحق المبين، وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله مبعوث رحمة للعالمين. We begin in the name of Allah. All praise and glory belongs to Allah, Lord of the worlds. Indeed, Allah is deserving of the best of thanks and the most beautiful of praises, and will testify that no one is worthy of worship but Allah alone, without any partner, the true Supreme King. And that the Prophet Muhammad was his servant and his prophet and his messenger, whom he sent as a mercy to the worlds. We welcome everybody to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the onset of this new series, Capturing Tranquility, the Islamic guidance on love and marriage in Islam. I pray that Allah Azza wa Jalla accepts from all of us our strides here and makes them sincerely for His sake, and not allow any of His creation to share of our intentions. Allahumma ameen. I wish, bi'idhnillah, just in this class to talk a bit about love, if you guys don't mind, and marriage very holistically. And I'm going to try my best throughout the course to make this applicable, relevant to the married and unmarried alike. وَبِاللَّهِ التَّوْفِيقِ. Of course, any divine grace that comes from Allah Azza wa Jalla, that's from Him and Him alone. Love is a very complicated subject, and it's very interesting how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala many a times draws parallels between the human being and the universe around him, and the similarity between the two, even in the Quran. And thus I became very fond regarding the subject of love by those who say that love between a man and a woman is also like nature. It's like the seasons that rotate one after another. They said why? Number one, they said because the coming of the seasons, their arrival and their departure, it's inevitable, right? Can't avoid it. And likewise is love. No matter how hard you try to avoid something like this, it's bound to happen, right? You're going to love, you're going to fall in love, you're going to love someone, something, you're going to adore something in your life. You know, I even remember when we were doing medieval literature, one of the courses I had to take for my undergrad, we read about a man in medieval Europe that wanted to raise his son away from any sort of immorality that was, rampant in the time. So he took him out of the city and he basically raised him in quarantine, away from any female interaction whatsoever. So he wouldn't know what a woman was. And then when he got a little older, his father got secured. This kid, he's unbreakable, he's immune. He took him into the city one day, and then he saw a bunch of women walking by. So he said, "Daddy, what are those?" Right? And he said, "These are ducks." All right? And he said, "Daddy, I want a duck." Right? The matter should not be, shied away from or ignored. And even that's why we say to parents, you need to be ready for these feelings, and you need to respect these feelings. Even the Prophet ﷺ and his wives, they had them, right? Even the Prophet ﷺ was approached by people who said, "O Messenger of Allah, I can't stop. Permit me to fornicate." And of course he did not permit him, but he was approachable ﷺ about that subject. And being in love, falling in love is not necessarily haram, especially when you couldn't avoid it. Like it was really accidentally one look and you couldn't stop thinking about her, right? You can't act on it, right? But that in and of itself is something you need to be patient with and restrain yourself, but that's not sinful in and of itself. A person could be in love and not sinful. A person that had a wife and in a moment of anger he used up his divorces, he divorced his wife, but he still can't get loving her out of his heart. He's in love, right? This is not necessarily sinful either. And by the way, speaking of it being inevitable, this reminds you of how merciful Allah is in commanding us to lower the gaze and guard the private part. Doesn't the verse say that? He told us how it would end, and He prevented us from even starting at the beginning of the chain. right? Because out of mercy for us, He doesn't want us to open the doors on ourselves to things that are inevitable and could many a times become overwhelming. So that's one way love is like the seasons, it's inevitable. Another way they said is because love affects your perception. You know, you ever heard of seasonal depression? That's in the fall, right? And then in the winter you get the winter blues, right? It affects your mood and the way you look at things, the way you look at the world around you. Likewise with love. People can literally become sick, right? Love sick, right? They can literally become blind in their judgment. That's why they say love is blind. And this is age old. You know, it was even reported that Abdullah ibn Abbas, anhuma, the great companion of the Prophet ﷺ, and his cousin, he saw a man, they brought to him a man in the Hajj season that was just skin on bones, totally malnourished. And he said, what is the matter with this person? قَالُوا بِهِ عِشْقٌ. They said the man had fallen in love, you know, he's just head over heels in love. He stopped eating, he stopped everything. And Ibn Abbas anhuma understood the danger of this, how it could throw your whole world, you know, out of swing. And he spent his entire day, the narrator says, his entire Arafah that day, seeking protection of Allah from his heart falling prey to ishq, to excessive love. Because it could indeed affect your perspective. Forget falling head over heels and killing yourself because of love. Let's try something less dramatic. When a guy becomes interested in a girl, or vice versa, and they say, I have to marry her. You ask him why he wants to marry her. Look at his gauge. Sometimes it's silly, right? What do you know about her? Everything about her is so perfect. The way she sips her tea. Like, come on, bro. Get real, right or wrong? The sisters, he's so religious because of his Facebook wall. Yeah? This is someone who's blinded by those emotions. And you know, studies have shown, by the way, just to mix a bit of science in here, that when a person is interested, when a person is inclined, a person is infatuated, or a person is aroused, any of those, your brain literally releases the same exact chemicals that are released when you use drugs. So you are under the influence of those emotions. They do affect the way you see the world around you. And that's why a person should never make a judgment in that state. That's another benefit of comparing love to the seasons, and they affect your perception. You know, many a times they get caught up in the whole dating game, and she sees that he is so well-meaning to her, and so caring, and he's so protective, and he even opens the car door for me. And these are not manners, right? If you want to know his manners, check behind closed doors, right? Those are called interests, right? Check how he is with his parents, check how he is with his sisters, check how he is with his Lord, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Don't let your perceptions be affected. You know, they say when you see a guy opening a car door for a girl, it's one of two things. It's either a new girl or a new car, right? Those are the only two options. And the girl is bought, you know, by a move like that. Side point, compare that with the Prophet ﷺ, who had more than one wife, right? He had alternatives, and still he would go out of his way to show his wives that he cared about them. He would bend down and allow them to step on his thigh, his blessed thigh, ﷺ, to get on the camel. He would go and take the end of his sleeve and wipe away their tears. He would go to Aisha even when she was not praying, meaning even when he could not be intimate with her, to tell her, as if to tell her, with his action, it's not just physical. He would go to her house and he would have her comb his hair in her lap. Alayhi salatu wasalam, radiallahu anha. Also, the third and last one I'll mention real quick, that they say love is like the seasons of nature, in that love is recurrent. Spring doesn't come once, it comes once every single year. It's a cycle. It goes and comes, and repeats and comes, revisits and departs. And this is also true about love, and a person needs to come to terms with that. You don't just fall in love once. In fact, does anyone have any idea how many people marry their first love? Meaning they marry the person that they first fall in love with? Any idea? I think it was the Pittsburgh Journal who documented this. Less than 1% of people marry their first love. You know what that means? That means we fell in love, then we fell out of love. And then we reinvested our heart, and we got disappointed again. And then we reinvested again. Why? Because we have this perception, you know, that this love is everything. And so we go all out with this person. And that's a product of our environment. We are a product of our environment. And part of making the right decisions about love and marriage is to be honest with yourself. Through the drama, and through the movies, and through all of this stuff, we have this, implicit message that love is everything. And by love, they mean infatuation, right? Love, so long as you guys love each other, everything else will work out. And that's not usually the case. Most people don't marry their first love, right? So long as, like the Titanic scene, so long as we love each other, it's a perfect, beautiful 3-hour movie. Put up with it, right? Who saw Titanic? Say astaghfirullah, put your hands down. But the message is there. It doesn't matter what happens so long. No one thinks in the middle of that movie that what they did was sinful, right? So long as they love each other, nothing else really matters. But once again, he died, didn't he? Yes. Right? It repeats itself. And people go and reinvest and re-fall in love all over again with different people. You know what is very useful for marriage as well for us as Muslims? This is to teach you that you could fall in love with the person you married all over again. Right? I can't. There's no love in the relationship anymore. Right? Love revisits. Right? And we may come back to that if we have time at a later point, inshallah. So after I've defined love a little bit, one of my favorite definitions, let me start on a positive note. We as a generation, we collectively stink at marriage. Okay? That's my positive note. Look. We are a generation that more than half of our marriages wind up in divorce. Okay? Don't worry, I'm going to bring a bright side out of this in a minute. Just bear with me. More than 50% of the marriages end in divorce. And you know that not every person that has a problem in his marriage divorces, which means way more than 50% of the marriages have problems in them. Some people, even though they have a problem, if they're not the 50-60% that get divorced, is still, I don't know, this is rough numbers, don't quote me. Another 10, 15, 20% who just put up with the marriage like a business contract, mutual benefit for the kids, Some people go even beyond that, forget the kids, egos take over and assassinate everything in their relationship, and they just live like in shared housing, right? Separate rooms for 20 years, the husband and wife are living. And those two scenarios, by the way, hardly ever exist anymore. They're not really in our generation. That was really the generation before us. Now, we don't like somebody, we unfriend them on Facebook, right? Likewise, when we don't like our wife, we text her, you are divorced times 3, right? I'm not trying to be funny, even though it is a bit hysterical that we've come to this, but that's the generation that we are. Women, the average age for a woman to get married in our generation is 28 years old, which basically means she gets to an age where she thinks, I'm moving past my prime and I want to have babies, right? So let me settle for someone that I would not have originally accepted as a qualified, a life partner. Why? Why is it all like this? Why is it such a dark image? A great part of that, it's largely because we frustrated ourselves regarding the concepts of love and marriage by having false expectations about love and marriage. When I was putting my notes together, I just tried to write down 4, major false expectations that gave birth to many frustrations in our relationships as a generation, as the millennials, right? The first of them is the assumption that love is constant. Like you love, so you always will love, right? Whereas in reality, love is something that's generated out of mutual love and respect more than anything else. And that's why the verse in the Quran says, Allah made out of you spouses and placed between you affection and mercy. Out of love and respect for each other, that's how it gets generated. And if you really respect someone, you really want to extend some affection to someone, you're going to sacrifice things you like for they like. You're going to show them that you respect them. You're going to show them affection. You're going to extend those things to them. A person that just thinks, oh, love is gone, I guess the relationship's not going to work anymore. This is one of the primary reasons why marriages turn so frustrating. That false expectation that love is constant, it will always be there. The second one is this assumption that marriage is problem-free. And everyone's, no, man, come on, I know marriage is not problem-free. I'm a grown man, I know these things. But deep down inside, you're imagining that your marriage is going to be different. And if you are doing the same thing as everybody else, then how in the world can you think your case is going to be any different? You know, I tell this to all the brothers that have ever consulted me on marriage, even though I'm only 29 years old. And those of you that ever spoke to me about this know, when you come and tell me the problems you have at home, I usually end up laughing. And many of the brothers know this. Why? Because everyone thinks his problem is so huge and that the marriage can't continue. And shaitan really inflates it in our heads sometimes, whereas in reality it's what? Your problem is exactly like everybody else's problems. Like I always tell the brothers, if it wasn't haram, if it wasn't backbiting, I'll name to you the brothers and sisters that have your relationship exactly. It's more typical than you can imagine. But we walk in thinking, no, this stuff doesn't exist. So when it does arise, we're like, oh man, it's a disaster, right? You think there can't be a disagreement, there can't be some, emotional flares where people say stuff that they don't really mean, but they swear they mean it, and we can never live together again. And by the way, this is usually the husband's fault. I'll pick on the sisters in a minute, but this one is the guy's fault. Why? Because we find men firm in certain things they're not supposed to be firm in, and lenient in things they're supposed to be lenient in, and then when emotions flare, and the woman has her fit, he agrees with her and says, okay, it's not going to work, it's not going to work. You know, back to your dad's house, right? And this is, one of the shuyukh, most shuyukh, they spend half their life consulting, as Imam Makki says. 70% of their time is not teaching people deen, it's, consultations for counseling. He said, one of the shuyukh, he said to us, a case came to me where a woman was complaining of her husband because after all these years, he divorced her on the staircase, right there on the stairs. On the spot, he severed the marriage. So I said to him, how could you just, right there on the staircase, just be divorced? Right outside your house? He said, Sheikh, she burned me out. I had nothing left inside me. She's unbelievable. What happened? They got into a fight, an argument, as they're on their way home. And of course there's a backdrop to the stories built up over time. She's saying, no, I'm fed up, divorce me right now. Okay? He said, lady, calm down. Get your act together, let's just get inside and talk about it. She said, no, we're not going to talk about it. He said, listen, stop being foolish, we're going to go inside. So he takes out his keys and he's turning the lock. She pulls the key out of his hand and says, no, divorce me right now. He said, give me the key back, I'm not going to ask you again. She said, if you're a man, you'll divorce me. So he double checked, made sure his mustache was still there. I'm a man, I'm from a man. You're divorced, right? Take a hike. And he divorced her. This guy's a fool. Allah placed divorce in your hands because He knew you were more qualified to safeguard it, to reserve it. Or else if it was in the woman's hands, 3 months max, the same week in each of those 3 months, we'd all be divorced. Right or wrong? So when you leave it and you send it back in her hands, then it's as if you're saying, oh Allah, you gave me something I'm not qualified to handle. Right? He put it in your hands because you're supposed to be more capable to put up with more. Right? So this expectation problem is not going to happen unless it can happen whenever the woman wants, fine. Another false expectation that frustrates us in marriage, and I'm leaving out the Islamic solutions to all of this on purpose, or else we're not going to have a course. Another one, and this one is my turn to pick on the sisters. The refusal to accept the balanced authority that Allah placed in the household. Right? Many a times our sisters assume that just because the last say is in the husband's hands, that means automatically he's a dictator. And if he uses that right that Allah Azza wa Jal gave him, he doesn't care about me. Because she has in her head that once we're in love, we don't even need to, discuss. We're just going to look in each other's eyes over some chocolate-covered strawberries, right? And we're going to see eye to eye on everything. The reality is that doesn't exist even if you're identical twins, raised in the exact same fashion, always wearing the exact same clothes, watching the same movies, reading the same books. You're not going to agree on everything. And no institution, marriage is an institution, can continue. There has to be a final say somewhere, right? Like there can only be so many appeals courts. And yes, some men abuse their authority, but the simple notion that a man using his authority is an act of uncare, not caring for his spouse, this destroys the marriage. The marriage needs that authority. Any institution needs that authority. And this is a huge reason for many marriages to fall. The husband says right, the woman says left. Obey Allah through your husband, right? You're not obeying the man because the man is inherently superior, because he's going to be, your king. No, right? That women are nothing but slaves for men, pregnant, barefoot, chained to the kitchen sink type image, that is born of a culture that we were raised in. And we need to make sure that doesn't seep into our understanding about the structure that Islam actually gave us. Well, the last one I'll mention very fast is what I'll call the mommy fixes all expectation. We are a very pampered generation, okay? Our parents get us cell phones, our parents pay our rent, our parents allow us to live until we're 24, 25, they buy us a car and pay the car insurance, for the most part, right? We don't understand the amount of responsibility life is going to demand of us. We're used to going back to our mother and our father for lots of things. When a marriage problem happens, when we go back to the parents and allow them to interfere and or over-interfere, this is of the greatest factors that frustrates a marriage. You expecting your parents can fix this one. Sheikh Ali Tantawi, rahimahullah, he spent over 50 years as a judge in Syria. And he says of the thousands of cases I've had to deal with, 3 out of 4 divorce cases were because of in-law interference. When a husband and wife have a problem, sorry, it's a little bit PG-13. Many a time that problem could get solved simply because of the husband's need for his wife and his wife's need for her husband, physical. They will not even get through it conversationally. Other factors will solve it. But when you let the parents in, the parents are outside, they don't even know that you guys, hugged and made up. The next morning you're fine again, and then he gets a call from his mother-in-law, wiping the floor with him, right? This stuff happens all the time, and vice versa. We did this. The Prophet ﷺ, the most amazing husband, but here I want to talk about the most amazing father-in-law. He visits his daughter Fatima radiallahu anha. He says, where is your husband? Where is your cousin? He said to her. She said, he's probably in the masjid. Something happened between us. The Prophet ﷺ did not ask her what happened. What a man, what a father-in-law. He didn't ask her what happened. He went to the masjid and he found Ali ibn Abi Talib trying to stay away from his wife, basically, right? Camping out in the masjid, laying out on the dirt. So he kept telling him, Qum Aba Turab, it's okay, get up. Abu Turab means the father of dirt, his whole back is covered in dirt. And Ali radiallahu anhu, that became the most beloved of the nicknames I've had because Messenger of Allah gave it to me. He told him, get up man, just go, make up with your family. And he tapped the dirt off his back, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? He didn't ask what was going on. He didn't try to intervene. Many a times that causes so much more harm than benefit. After all this negativity, right? You guys are all depressed, about to go get divorces or not get married altogether. Well, where do I want to go from here? Am I trying to say, after all this, that there's no such thing as love in marriage? No way, right? Am I trying to say there's no such thing as happy endings? There are, on one condition, and that you get married. And if you're already married, you renew your vows between you and Allah, right? You renew your marriage and make it for the sake of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a constant in our religion. You give something up for Allah, you hand it over to Allah, you categorize it in the, that section, that sacred section in your heart. This is for Allah, you get to keep it and benefit from it. If you don't, it becomes just a pain and such a hardship, such a burden, such a dark cloud over your head. Ibrahim a.s. told, slaughter your son. He's ready to slaughter? Fine, you can keep him. That's the way it works. That's the way everything works. But what do I mean get married for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What does that even mean? Getting married for the sake of Allah. I'll give you two images and then I'll explain. Image one is Zaynab bint Jahsh, radiallahu anha, the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and later became his wife. He came to her and said, "O Zaynab, marry Zayd." She said, "I'm going to marry Zayd?" The freed slave of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, known free. She's from a noble clan, right? And Zayd is a freed slave. Like, how do I marry him? Like, what are people going to say? She said, "I would never do that." So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verse in Surah Al-Ahzab, wherein He said, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ وَلَا مُؤْمِنَةٍ إِذَا قَضَى اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ أَمْرًا أَن يَكُونَ لَهُمُ الْخِيَرَةُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِمْ. It's unbefitting for a believing man and a believing woman, when Allah and His Messenger have decided a matter, for them to have any choice in their affair. So she understood this is not like cousinly advice. This is a command from Allah. Fine, I'll get married for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she got married to Zayd ibn Haritha radiallahu anhu. It was written, it was destined that her marriage to him was just another test for her. Because even the two most righteous people may not necessarily be the two most compatible people. They ultimately got a divorce and were disconnected. Battery? Okay. They ultimately got a divorce. She didn't feel like her life was ruined, and me obeying Allah and His Messenger, doing it for the sake of Allah, came back with some awful consequences, and now I'm like a divorced woman now, and I'm looked down upon in society. She accepted it patiently and was confident in her Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah Azza wa Jalla repaid her how? By granting her something He did not grant any other wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He married her to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from above 7 skies himself. The verses say, فَلَمَّا قَضَى زَيْدٌ مِّنْهَا وَطَرًا زَوَّجْنَاكَهَا. And when Zayd concluded his marriage with her, we married you to her, O Muhammad. He had proposed to her, and she said to him, subhanAllah, what a righteous woman. This is the Messenger of Allah proposing. And she would say to him, حَتَّى أَسْتَأْمِرَ رَبِّي. No, until I consult my Lord. I'm not marrying you, O Messenger of Allah, till I pray istikhara. Imagine that. So Allah sends down the answer. He says, we've married you to her, O Muhammad. And so he answered upon her, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he said, she says, so after the Messenger, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, died, we would stretch our arms against one another to see who had the longest arm. And it was Sawda bint Zam'a radiallahu anha. She was the tallest of them. Aisha continues to say, but when Zaynab, this one, died first, we realized the longest arm, he meant the farthest spending, the most charitable of us. And she was the first of his wives to die after him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the first of his wives to catch up with him. Marrying for the sake of Allah has happy endings. We read lots of articles, lots of tips, we're on tons of forums, we like so many pages about marriage tips and all this good stuff. Look, you're reading for people that by and large have failed at producing these happy endings. You should always keep that in mind. Someone who gives you the greatest talk in the world about raising kids, the moment you look at his children, you're like, listen, I don't care what he has to say to me. I don't got time for somebody like that, right? Realize who is writing to you. Also, one other image that I want to give you about a happy ending. Ibn Aqil al-Hanbali, rahimahullah, one of the great scholars of the Hanbali method. He says, I arrived in Mecca for Hajj absolutely broke. I lost all of my money altogether. And out of nowhere, I came across a bright, heavy, golden necklace. And it was like a treasure, a gift from Allah to me. I'm broke and I got this necklace, now I'm loaded. He said, then I heard a man saying, 100 dinars for whoever finds my golden necklace. 100 dinars, whoever finds my golden necklace. He turned and found this man was blind. So if he ran off, the guy wasn't going to see him. But he remembered who? He remembered his Lord who's not blind, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? He says, so I brought it to the man and he described the necklace to me and I returned it back to him. And he gave me the 100 dinars and I said, I did this for Allah and I will not accept repayment for this from anyone but Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he continued his Hajj. Alhamdulillah, Allah Azza Jal enabled him to find, means of sustenance for those days. He says, فَانْحَدَرْتُ إِلَى حَلَبْ. I rode a ship and the ship broke and I found myself in Halab, one of the cities in Syria. May Allah Azza Jal grant peace to His people and security to the oppressed and grant them victory against their oppressor. Allahumma ameen. He says, I found myself in Halab at the beginning of Ramadan and I entered the masjid and began reading Quran. And the people heard me reciting. And they said to me, you can recite the Quran, you memorize Quran. He said, yes. They said, well, our Imam just died right before Ramadan. We're stuck. Can you lead us in Qiyam, in Tarawih? He said, fine, I'll do it. And he spent the month of Ramadan for them, leading the prayers for them. After the month was over, the people were so fond of this man. They said, please stay with us. This is a great scholar. They didn't even know who they had their hands on. Who has books that we have until today, by the way. They said, please stay with us. But I don't have anything here. This is not my hometown. I'm a traveler. This is, my family is not here. They said, we can make your family here. Listen, we'll marry you off. We'll get you a family. Just stay with us. Teach us, lead us, guide us. Our Imam that just died, he has a daughter. Okay, you can marry her. Please, chill out. Don't go anywhere. Please stay with us. He said, fine. And he agreed to stay with them for the sake of Allah. To get married for the sake of Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, I entered upon this woman. And I became stunned by her. Some narrations say, to the point that she said, what is the matter with you? Like, why aren't you looking at me? Like, imagine, he's entering upon his wife on the wedding night, and he's not looking at her. Because he was looking at a golden necklace around her neck. This same golden necklace. He said, no. It's just, this necklace has a story. And he explained to her the story of the necklace. And she began to say, Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah. My father came back from Hajj that year, the Imam of the Masjid, saying, oh Allah, bless my daughter with a man that is righteous and trustworthy, like the man who gave me back the necklace. Same guy. He says, and then she became pregnant. And she delivered the child and she died. After delivery. And a year later that child died. So me and that child inherited the necklace from her, and then he died, I inherited the necklace all to myself, and life went on. He got it anyway, right? When he gave it up for Allah. And when he got married for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, there is a happy ending in this dunya and then in the akhirah. Now, how does someone get married for the sake of Allah? Look, the Sharia of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala acknowledges your need to get married. Like, what do you mean get married for Allah? I get married because I want to get married. I get married because I think she's hot. I get married because I want to make babies. I get married because my parents are on my case. What do you mean for Allah? It's for me. The Sharia acknowledges that you have those needs. That's why the Sharia encourages you to get married. So you can fulfill all of that at once. That's why when he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, get married, he spoke about the physical needs, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he said, فَإِنَّهُ أَغَضُّ لِلْبَصَرِ, because it will help you lower your gaze. Physical needs. Emotional needs. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, in Surah Al-Rum, we made for you from yourselves, spouses, لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا, so you may find comfort and tranquility with that spouse, with that mate of yours. Also, you have spiritual needs that are very hard to accomplish without having that peace of mind, that tranquility, that comfort that only comes in marriage, when you complete yourself with marriage. Isn't it beautiful how Surah An-Nur, that speaks about the light of Allah, the guidance of Allah, the light that He places of guidance in the hearts of the believers, that whole surah speaks about morality, and speaks about chastity, speaks about lowering the gaze, the rulings on hijab, the rulings on knocking and visitation, the punishment for adultery. All of that is in Surah An-Nur, the chapter called The Light, right before it talks about the light of Allah in the hearts of the slaves. Because unless you're able to contain yourself, marriage is of the ways you do that, comfort yourself, get that peace of mind, it's harder, much harder, not impossible, but much harder to climb that spiritual ladder. And so that is what's meant by getting married for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, like, because for the sake of Allah, we have a very limited understanding of it sometimes. There's a beautiful hadith, I'll share with you a hadith just to encapsulate or crystallize this concept for you about doing things for the sake of Allah. The first of them is hadith of Ka'b ibn Ujra radiallahu anhu, narrated by Tabarani. He says that a man passed by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in front of his companions, and when they saw how tough and how energetic he was, min jaladihi wa nashatihi, the hadith says, they said, Ya Rasulullah, law kana hadha fi sabilillah. So Messenger of Allah, if only that, like this dude, buff guy, energetic person, you know, if only this was used for the sake of Allah. What do they mean? They mean for the service of the religion, they mean on the battlefield. You know what he said to them, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? He said, إن كان خرج يسعى على ولده صغارا فهو في سبيل الله. If this man had left his house, he walked out just like that, chasing after the needs of his children that are young, then it is for the sake of Allah. وإن كان خرج يسعى على والديه أبويه شيخين كبيرين فهو في سبيل الله. And if he walked out seeking to spend on his two elderly weak parents, then it's for the sake of Allah. This one's coming, this one's yours. وإن كان يسعى على نفسه يعفها أو يعفها فهو في سبيل الله. And if he walked out to try to strive for his own sake, to keep his own his own self chaste, then it is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To keep my life in line with the way Allah wants me, that is for the sake of Allah. We have to widen, that's what he's teaching us, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, widen your understanding for the sake of Allah. The other hadith is the hadith of Abu Dharr in Sahih Muslim, that he said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, at the end of that hadith about the many ways you can do charity. He said, وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةً. And in one of you being intimate, meaning with their spouse, that is a charity. They said, Ya Rasulullah, أَيَأْتِي أَحَدُنَا شَهْوَتَهُ ثُمَّ يَكُونُ لَهُ فِيهَا أَجْرٌ. So Ya Rasulullah, how? One of us goes, remember what I said, like how for the sake of Allah? It's for me, I want it. They said, O Messenger of Allah, someone goes and responds to his own lusts, and then he gets rewarded by Allah for it. The Prophet ﷺ said, is it not the case that had he given in to his lusts fi haram, in an unlawful way, in a forbidden way, meaning adultery, fornication, he would have been punished, he would have been sinful? They said yes. He said likewise. So when he does it in halal, he gets rewarded for it. That's how perfect Allah's fairness is, right? So for the sake of Allah, when I say get married for the sake of Allah, that means to have that relationship the way Allah wants you to, right? Someone that's valid, acceptable for your marriage. So for the sake of Allah, number one is going to mean choosing the spouse Allah wants, and number two, living with that spouse as Allah wants. Okay? That's when you're going to have a happy ending. Is that clear? Choosing the spouse Allah wants, and living with the spouse as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. I want to conclude the last 15 or 20 minutes. You guys are probably exhausted by now, because next week, inshallah, I believe our appointment is about choosing the right spouse. I want to talk about something that is usually very overlooked. That's a huge obstacle for many people, married and unmarried, regarding love and marriage. And that is preparing your heart, or correcting your heart so that it may love properly. The love between spouses, as you heard, is one of the signs of Allah, the signs of the Creator. And this is something that's beyond explanation. It's something natural, it's something human, it's something that is a blessing from Allah, right? To love and be loved is a gift that Allah places in your heart and other people's hearts, love for you and you love for them. And it promotes good health even physically. But all of that is contingent upon you loving that significant other properly. What in the world does that mean? That you love your significant other. Your love for them is secondary to your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is huge. Sometimes it begins that way, then things get blurred, right? Sometimes from the get, you're disobeying Allah just to be with that significant other. Your love for your significant other should always remain secondary to your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because as Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. There are people that have set up rivals to Allah. How? By loving them the way they're supposed to be loving Allah. As for the believer, the description of a believer is that they are more intense in their love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, in his book, I believe Miftah Dar al-Sa'adah, the keys to the abode of happiness, he says that in the Arabic language there are 60 words for love. Okay? He explains in that book 50 of them. Like increments, right? You know what the highest word for love is? Ibadah, worship. That's what worship means. Even in English, by the way. When people say, this dude worshipped Elvis Presley, these people worship Jay-Z, right? When people say these things, what do they mean? Do they mean they make sujood to them? No, they mean they adore them. Their life revolves around them, right? They go to sleep at night, wake up in the morning thinking about. That's worship. They love them dearly more than anything else. That should only be for Allah, not even for your halal spouse. One of the Salaf, and it's a very profound statement, he said, I would rather fornicate than have Allah see in my heart that I love someone more than I love him. I'm paraphrasing his words. Why? Because the major sin of the heart, loving someone more than you love Allah, that's shirk. That's a form, a shade of disbelief. Whereas fornicating, as audacious as it is, it's still a major sin. It's not disbelief, right? So a person must be vigilant about that. And you know why also? Because in the human being, and you need to understand this about yourself and your spirituality, your heart, there is a need inside every human being that can only be fulfilled by Allah. There's a franticness inside you that can only be reassured by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know why? Because Allah created you like that, to adore perfection. And He is the only one that's perfect. So when you begin to adore someone else, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. This is one of the greatest reasons why people get disappointed in love relationships and in marriage. You're imagining it's going to satisfy you so much. No. There's a certain degree of satisfaction, gratification, security, reassurance that only exists with Allah. Only He is perfectly just. Only He is perfectly beautiful. Only He is perfectly powerful, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Only He cares about you the way He does. No one cares about you the way that Allah does. Only He refuses to hold grudges against you, whereas other people will. Only He has always been there for you. Only He can keep His promises to you. Other people do not, and sometimes cannot, even if they wanted to. And that's why if you allow that station in your heart to get filled with anybody but Him, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. And by the way, the Prophet ﷺ is the one that directed us to this very point. He said in the hadith of Abu Hurairah, Sahih Muslim, this is a hadith that every spouse needs to memorize. لا يفرق مؤمن مؤمنا إن كره منها خلقا رضي منها غيره. No believing man should hate a believing woman, meaning the believing woman he lives with, his wife. If he hates one of her qualities, let him love another. So always remember, listen, perfection is for Allah. I have my flaws too. And so if you do that, then alhamdulillah, you're going to be fine, because your expectations in that case will be met, because you will be in fact adoring Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you read the love life of your Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it was just that. Clear as day. As beautiful as those love stories were, they never interfered with his love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Aisha anha would speak about how dedicated he was at home. He would even stitch his own clothes, fix his own sheep, fix his own shoes. He would milk his own sheep. He would do it himself. He would be in the service of his family. She says, but when the call to prayer is made, he would walk out as if he didn't know us and we didn't know him. The Prophet ﷺ came around to the night of Aisha and used to spend the night with her. He said to her, that Hakim narrates, O Aisha, da'ini ata'abbad bi Rabbi. Permit me, I know this is your time, your share, spend time with you. Permit for me to spend this night in the worship of my Lord. She said, O Messenger of Allah, I love being close to you, but I love whatever you love. I mean, go ahead. She knows what he wanted, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The other hadith of her getting up in the middle of the night, I believe I mentioned it here in a khutbah a few weeks back. When she got up in the middle of the night looking for him and she found him in sujood, prostrating, crying, saying, Oh Allah, I seek refuge in your pleasure from your punishment, your pardon, in your pleasure from your anger, your pardon from your punishment. I seek refuge in you from you. I can't praise you enough. You are as you have praised yourself. She said, O Messenger of Allah, you are somewhere and I am somewhere completely different. She realized that she's getting up in the middle of the night looking concerned what her husband is. And he's already up in the middle of the night concerned about his station with his Lord, his Creator subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, even the one that he loved more than Aisha, which was who? Khadija radiallahu anha. You know, Al-Dhahabi, Imam Al-Dhahabi rahimahullah, he says, this is something really cool, I'll be done in a minute inshallah. He says, of Allah's mercy over His Prophet is that the only wife that Aisha was truly felt threatened by, truly was jealous of, was the wife that already died, Khadija radiallahu anha. She says about herself that the Messenger of Allah used to always mention Khadija, all the time, to the degree that one time I said, Khadija, Khadija, كأن ليس في الدنيا إلا خديجة عجوز حمراء الشدقين هلكت في الدهر قد أبدلك الله خيرا منها, as narrated by Ahmad. She said, Khadija, Khadija, they're always mentioning Khadija, as if there's nobody in the world, she says, but Khadija. She was an old woman with red gums, meaning her teeth had fallen out, nothing left but the red. She was agitated, may Allah be pleased with her. With red gums that died of old age. Allah has replaced you with someone better than her. Meaning who? Her. The Prophet ﷺ said what? He said, لا والله ما أبدلني خيرا منها. By Allah, He did not replace me with anybody better than her. Right? He says, she believed in me. Once again, love is produced, generated by mutual love, by mutual affection and respect. She believed in me when everybody called me a liar. And she spent on me when people deprived me. And she granted me children when I was deprived of children from any other woman. Another narration, he said, إِنِّي رُزِقْتُ حُبَّهَا. That's the statement I want. I was provided her love. As much as he loved her, even more than Aisha, he never lost sight that Allah provided me with her love. Sometimes even us, what we're called at least, religious people, right? You can't wait to do it halal, so you wait till you get married and then like you party after you get married. All the things you wanted to do before marriage, you did it in marriage. Like you take your spouse and you go to the movie theater, then you go do this and you go do that, and like you start cutting corners, and then she has to kind of dress like this so that, you know, we can go skiing together, right? Allah provided you with her loving you, and provided her with you loving her. Allah owns both of your hearts. Make sure He sees that He remains number one in your hearts, or else He can turn your hearts away from one another. This is a key point to teach your heart when it loves, to love properly, to safeguard that top station in your heart. As Allah Azza wa Jal says to Musa alayhi salam, وَأَلْقَيْتُ عَلَيْكَ مَحَبَّةً مِّنِّي وَلِتُصْنَعَ عَلَى عَيْنِي. And I cast upon you a love from me. I made people love you, O Musa, so that you may be raised, fashioned under my eye. Likewise, you want to be fashioned in a beautiful Muslim home. Allow your iman to thrive. You two take each other hand in hand towards the pleasure of Allah. Get out of this dunya safely. Have an easy reckoning. All of that, make sure you find a spouse care for that love, but care more than that, the hands in who? The hands that possess the hearts of both of you. You know, as one of the scholars, he says, when you turn away from Allah towards anyone, remember that you're turning towards someone whose heart remains in the hand of Allah. Whoever you're turning towards, that person's heart belongs in Allah. I'll stop there, inshallah azza wa jal. 50 minutes is enough of a beat down about marriage and love. SubhanAllah wa bihamdihi.
ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون.